So I want to ask Loras Schissel from the Library of Congress, who's also a conductor, as I mentioned, and I think he can speak a little bit to the why we need a George and Ira Gershwin critical edition at this stage. And then I'm going to turn it over to you. All right. We'll have a little bit of time here, probably about 10-15 minutes for questions. So if you can think of one in the next couple of minutes, that'd be great. I'll bring the microphone out so we can all hear the question. And Loras.
Well, thank you. I can't tell you how excited I am that this project is happening at the University of Michigan because of its long history of its commitment to both musicology, that's a fancy word for the study of music, but particularly its commitment to the study of American music. And this is a new thing. We're finally comfortable studying our own music. But also the fact that this is happening in a university with a long and wonderful history of performing music. So truth be told, as a young instrumental musician growing up in Iowa, one of the magic moments of my career that made me want to go into music was playing in the Iowa All-State Band under William D. Ravelli. And I can finally say, after 49 plus years, I made it to the University of Michigan, Dr. Ravelli. But you know, and I come to this music through George's concert pieces. They've been my best friends for about 25 years now. The Rhapsody in Blue, the Concerto in F, the American in Paris, those pieces. And it's funny, our ears hear this music. You have to realize George died in the late 1930s. Our ears hear this music, oddly enough, as big band music from the 1940s. We conditioned our ears. And I say that not as a criticism of Gershwin's music becoming swing music by big bands and such. The music is so strong, the music is so malleable, that you can stretch it, you can pull it, you can do all sorts of stuff with it, and it never hurts it. And everyone can take their take on this music. You can take a classic Gershwin song, and that's an upbeat rhythm song, and make it a ballad, and if you're a good singer or a good instrumental musician, you can make that work. But it's changed how we hear Gershwin's music, and we don't hear Gershwin's music the way Gershwin heard it when he wrote it. I use an example, you know the song, do 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 bah. Fascinating rhythm, or as he originally called it, syncopated city. When George wrote it, and the way George played it was ta 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 ta. It doesn't swing. It's early. This is part of the early sort of gestation period of American jazz, where we're not really doing that stuff that the Ellington Band did in the 40s, or the Count Basie Band did in the 40s. So over the years, George's concert music has developed, and I'm talking about, you know, symphony orchestra performances of Rhapsody in Blue or American in Paris, has developed, and I mean this in a nice way, but sort of several generations layers of crud on the top. And every once in a while, it's like that room in the house that you don't use, but every once in a while the wife really gets on your case that we gotta clean that room out because it's a mess. And so it's time for George's concert music for a little scrubbing. And I was using as an illustration, we were talking about the piece earlier, you know, one of those transition periods. Rich didn't get up to that period of George studying with a lot of different people. We don't know what he studied with these people, Henry Cowell and Schillinger and all of these folks. But George was one of those people that was like an enormous sponge that could just absorb things so quickly and assimilate them into his music right away. And there were certain pieces, the Cuban Overture, the Second Rhapsody, some of those pieces that are not quite the repertoire pieces that the American in Paris are. Those were sort of those transition pieces that get us to Porgy. These are experiments, they're things, he's just trying to write a good concert piece. He's trying to integrate these things that he's learning from these teachers that he has. And Cuban Overture is one of my favorite pieces, so as a conductor, I get to sneak it in on a lot of programs when I work with the symphony orchestra. And what I found was when you could buy or rent the orchestral set of parts, there were so many problems with it that it would take weeks just to clean up the set of parts of all the sort of crud. You know, so much of this music was prepared for publication after George died. And different people had their hands in, I think, lovingly, or at least trying to, make these practical additions for orchestras to play this music. Well, things were changed, and things that George had originally written or had altered through the course of playing these pieces and conducting them. George became a very competent conductor towards the end of his career. These things didn't make it into the arrangement. So the Cuban Overture, as you buy it, when you buy this orchestral score and set of parts, ends this way. It builds up a huge head of steam by the time it's all over, and then it goes zing, ba-da, ba-da, ba. Pretty good ending, but not quite good enough. So you look at the only published edition of that during George's lifetime was the piano four-hand edition. And on the end of that, it ends, ba-da, 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 bang! It makes sense that way. So you look at, you can buy the later published orchestral parts and stuff for that, but if you look, and I brought a copy of it here, I looked at George's original score for this, and not very carefully, and I looked, and there it was, just that one bar ending that way. But then you look carefully up at the top, and George has penciled in on the top of that bar 3 times. So there you have it. And sometimes it's those 2 or 3 bars that really make or break a piece. And so having this music be reevaluated again, cleaned up, critical editions don't solve all the problems, but they do offer solutions to things or possibilities. It's still up to conductors, it's still up to fiddle players and flute players and trumpet players and all those things collectively to come up with the answers to these questions. But if you can start with something that's clean, if you can start with something that really gives you at least possible solutions to the problems, then you can take it up a notch. And the fact that you could do that here with the university orchestra or with the singers from the school chorus or the piano players. I mean, don't get me started on the Rhapsody in Blue. That's a whole afternoon discussion about a piece with a lot of problems. And yet, when it's all said and done, critical edition or not, although I'm glad we're doing it, when it's all said and done, we still have the music. So, thank you.